So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate. Just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
I get jewelry for how good you are in bed, especially rings. So,
Come on, you're putting yourself down. I'm sure you're...
No, please. I mean, even when I was married, it's been so long since I had sex anyhow. I can't remember who gets tied up. That's how long it
yeah. No, I'm sure you're fine.
Are you good in bed?
Hey, they're not just be young, Joan.
I think I was lousy in bed. I used to say to my husband, because I'm a widow now, I say, why don't you call out my name while we're having sex? He said, I don't want to wake you up. And now I'm going out with men that are so old. You know, This guy gave me a hickey, and he left his teeth in my neck. Actually, what I do have is dropping now. I'm getting older. I get up in the morning when I'm not wearing a bra. I have to walk to the bathroom like this. I mean, it's just... Ugliest child ever born in Larchmont, New York.
You? No.
Doctor looked at me, looked at the afterbirth, kept the afterbirth in me. Yes.
But you
My parents hated me. They would say, why can't you be like your cousin Charlotte? Why can't you be like your cousin Charlotte? Charlotte had died at birth.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, July the 30th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now the headlines for Wednesday, July the 30th. NTSB holds investigative hearing on January 29 midair collision. You don't use violence to address your corporate concerns, says New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Iran's regime preparing for Plan B. While chaos reigns supreme in Tehran, insiders prepare for the day after. 8.8 earthquake off Russia triggers Pacific-wide tsunami alerts. Just in, U.S. economic growth rebounded more than expected in the second quarter. And those are the headlines for Wednesday, July the 30th. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the political corner.
The Second Amendment tax holiday. So from September 8th to December 31st, all firearms, munitions, accoutrements, as well as things like bow and arrows, are tax-free. So that's going to save some of our folks a lot of money to be able to have that. So we're delivering there. Now, on back-to-school tax.
And that was Governor DeSantis in the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from the American Veterans Center, the Patriotic Short.
He said something like, I need you to destroy everything in front of us from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So basically that 180-degree radius in front of us, tanks, they shoot the house, follow it up with some machine gun, and that effectively pushed the insurgents back. Like they couldn't withstand that. And then we would go through and clean up. I had guys on rooftops going from rooftop to rooftop. I was on the ground in the street behind the tanks, and we just methodically did that step by step. We didn't move any faster than we needed to. We didn't rush. There obviously was a sense of urgency, but I think commanders can sometimes have a tendency to rush. Like, we got to get to the next thing. We got to like apply pressure. Well, if you're effective and methodical, tanks 3 to 9, blowing things up, move one step forward, you're going to have momentum. You're going to have this like tremendous pressure that you're placing on the enemy. And you're not rushing, but that pressure just becomes so much that you force them out.
And that was the that was the Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, motivation.
You don't feel like it today. I know you had a long night. You're a little tired. You don't feel like it. I get it. But if you don't feel like getting after it, I hope you feel like being weak. I hope you feel like not accomplishing anything, because that's what's going to happen. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And yet, somehow we expect things to change. You think you're going to get in better shape. You think you're going to get more money. You think your relationship is going to improve. You think you're going to get promoted. You think you're going to get a raise. You think the world is going to get better without you doing anything. But it isn't. Nothing is going to change unless you change what you're doing. Change the junk food that you're eating. Change the time that you wake up. Change what you do when you get out of bed. Change what you do with your time. That's what you need to do. You have to change some things or nothing will change. So make changes and start little. Get up a little bit earlier. Get a workout done. Doesn't have to be epic. You don't have to do a 3-hour leg day, but get up and get something done. And how about you plan what you're going to do in the day? How about you change what time you get to work by showing up 10 minutes earlier? And you square your gear away, or you dial in your tools, or your desk, or your workspace. That's what you need to do.
You want to know how to get better? You want to know how to take back control of your life? Stop looking for a sweatless solution. Stop looking for the easy path. Stop looking for someone or something to turn it all around for you. And start looking for your will. Start looking for your discipline.
When you start hearing that weakness creep into your brain, telling you to back down, in that very moment, you've got to decide that you're going to be the commander of your brain. You've got to shut that weak voice down. It does not get a vote in what you're doing today. Your laziness, your sore legs, your sleepiness, your feelings, none of those get a vote. You're asserting dominance over your mind. You are getting done whether you feel like it or not. If you tell yourself the truth, and the truth is, I'm not happy with where I'm at. That's the truth. The truth is, I can do more. The truth is, I can be in better shape. The truth is, I can work harder than I'm working right now. The truth is, I can do more for my family. The truth is, I can do much better than I'm doing right now. If that's the real truth, if that's what you believe, if you believe that to be the truth, you won't have to find more discipline. Discipline will find you.
I don't hang with people who can only get up when they got something to motivate them. That's not somebody I want to hang out with. I want to hang with somebody, I don't care what the circumstances, I don't care what the situation. You put it on your back and you like, let's go. Are you hearing me? You gotta have that dog. You gotta be intentional and deliberate. And everybody that's running with you gotta be intentional and deliberate. Discipline is doing what you said you were gonna do when you don't feel like doing it, when you felt like doing it in the first place. That's all it is. But most people will not be successful because when there's not anything emotionally attached to it, they're gonna quit and give up. Most people were closer than they ever thought they were to finishing that big thing, but they never finished it because they didn't feel like finishing it. Or they were doing it and it was pain. And most people quit in the pain because the pain hurts so bad that they don't know if they want to keep going to get to go. Like you're going to wake up most days and not be pumped up. You're going to wake up most days and not feel like doing it. But when you can get to a point that you do it anyway, then there's no way you won't reach any of your goals. And you're going to have to fight and fight and fight and fight. And most of you won't be successful not because you can't do it, but you can't outlast your old you long enough to get to your new you. There's no one said, I want to procrastinate. I don't want to get it done. I don't want to get to the next level. No, every person wants to make their dreams become a reality.
But the reason why most people will never get it, never achieve it, and never succeed is because you got to give up stuff in order to go up. You got to make sacrifices. You got to discipline yourself consistently. You got to program yourself to suffer on a daily basis in order to reform those lazy habits into ones that build success.
I need you to do that sucks every day of your life. That's how you get better. That's how you get stronger. You embrace the resistance you feel when you're stretching yourself to go beyond what's comfortable. And if you're not pushing yourself, you're shrinking. You are fading away. And the reason why we fast from time to time is not that we have to fast, but at some point you gotta fast because you gotta tell the flesh who's in control. I'm in control. You're not in control. I know you don't want to wake up. You don't have an option. Get up. We trying to eat. There's a certain lifestyle we want.
Everybody wants it, everybody dreams of it, but very few are willing to work for it. So you got to make a declaration that you are going to be one of those few people who will make it happen. Talk is cheap, so you shut your mouth and grind. Your actions will speak for themselves. You make those little changes, those little habits that you have to change them, those bad habits, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised the little things, the little changes, they add up and they become big things. Change the little things and over time you can change your life. But if you don't change what you're doing and how you do it, nothing else will change.
And that was Motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Daily Stoic.
2 tasks. What then makes a person free from hindrance and self-determining? For wealth doesn't, neither does high office, state, or kingdom. Rather, something else must be found. In the case of living, it is the knowledge of how to live. Epictetus, Discourses, 4.1.62 through 64.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron.
One of my pet peeves is this claim in the culture that religion and science are diametrically opposed. In fact, it really bugs me that in study after study, young people often say the number one reason they leave the church is that science has refuted religion. A lot of people succumb to this modern myth, and it is distinctively modern, that religion and science are at loggerheads. There's so many great figures in the history of science that have been devout believers. My favorite example being Georges Lemaitre, the formulator of the Big Bang theory of cosmic origins, which everybody believes today. He's a Catholic priest.
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. And now the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, if nuclear weapons are a dreadful threat and mankind cannot afford war any longer, then mankind cannot afford statism any longer. Let no man of good will take it upon his conscience to advocate the rule of force outside or inside his own country. Let all those who are actually concerned with peace, those who do love man and do care about his survival, realize that if war is ever to be outlawed, it is the use of force that has to be outlawed. Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter The Roots of War from the book Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from the psychopathy section, 50 social rules no one talks about. Don't interrupt people when they're speaking. A simple thank you goes a long way. Be mindful of personal space. Don't overshare in casual settings. It's okay to say no. Don't take up too much space in shared environments. Give credit where it's due. Don't overstay your welcome. Keep personal issues private. Respect different communication styles. Don't rush people. Everyone has their own pace. Respect it. Don't speak negatively about others behind their back. Keep promises. Avoid comparing struggles. Mind your body language. Listen more than you speak. Don't assume familiarity. Respect people's time. Don't be a one-upper. Give compliments. Don't judge others too quickly. Pay attention to non-verbal cues. Be present. Compliment genuinely. Don't dominate conversations. Wait your turn in line. Don't ask overly personal questions too soon. Offer help when you see someone struggling. Don't bring up controversial topics unless necessary. Respect others' opinions. Respect silence. Don't dominate social media. Don't interrupt people's celebrations. Give people space to be themselves. Don't over-apologize. Don't gossip. Be punctual. Avoid unsolicited advice. Be mindful of your tone. Don't take everything personally. Don't assume someone's needs. Avoid checking your phone. Be cautious with humor. Don't monopolize group photos. Offer an exit strategy in uncomfortable situations. Be mindful of your volume. Don't speak for others. Be gracious when receiving compliments. Don't keep people waiting. Respect differing perspectives. And that is the Psychopathy Corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Stuart Varney.
We're going to deal with this right at the top of the show. The 8.8 earthquake struck just off the coast of Russia. That set off tsunami warnings as far east as the coast of California. Well, that warning has been downgraded to an advisory. We have eyes on the waves as they arrive. No damage so far. We also have eyes on several economic indicators. Second quarter GDP came in with an expansion rate, an annual expansion rate of 3%. Now, that is stronger than expected. Yes, we now have 3% growth, much better than in the first quarter. Later, you'll see Fed Chair Powell answering questions about interest rates. He is not likely to cut rates today. And after the bell, two tech giants report, Microsoft and Meta, what they say and what Powell says will have a big impact on your money. This morning, the Dow Industrials, let's check the markets, a little bit of green, Dow up 7, S&P up 4, NASDAQ up 36 points. But there's green on your screen. Interest rates, the 10-year Treasury moving up to 4.35, the 2-year coming in about 3.90, yeah, we're at 3.91 at the moment, and Bitcoin, we checked, and it is now at 117.7. Politics. President Trump says the trade talks with China in Stockholm have been going, quote, very well. Those are his words. And he says he may visit China, perhaps before the end of the year. He has a threat for India. If they don't agree to a trade deal by Friday's deadline, they will be hit with a 25% tariff. On the show today, the end of the climate rules that have seeped into every aspect of our lives. The EPA will rescind what's known as the endangerment finding. That is the legal underpinning for all those regulations on CO2s. Administrator Lee Zeldin calls it the biggest deregulatory move in U.S. history. And something good about President Trump in the New York Times. Columnist Bret Stephens says the Trump presidency takes a better turn. He lists a string of Trump successors and says if the Democrats can't come up with some successors of their own, they'll be out of power for a long time. That was in the Times. It's Wednesday, July the 30th, 2025.
And that was Stuart Varney, and bumbling his way through the broadcast and nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Lee Zeldin, a clip of Lee Zeldin on Maria Bartiromo. Mornings without Maria, let's put it that way.
Administration said that carbon dioxide, when mixed with a bunch of other well-mixed gases, the greenhouse gases, that it contributes to climate change. And then they're able to put all these regulations on vehicles, on airplanes, on stationary sources to basically regulate out of existence, in many cases, a lot of forms of segments of our economy. So this has been referred to as basically driving a dagger into the heart of the climate change religion.
So he's wrong. Again, carbon dioxide is not now, it never has been, and it never will be a greenhouse gas. The greenhouse effect takes place 8 to 11 miles high in the sky. Carbon dioxide travels along the ground. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now on Maria Bartiromo, a little bit about crypto.
Great. I do want to ask you about this as well. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has just published this op-ed in the Washington Post, the roadmap to making America a crypto superpower. Here's what he writes. Innovation defines the American spirit, but it requires balanced, forward-looking regulation to thrive. No one understands this better than President Donald Trump. He also writes, the president's future-focused approach to blockchain technology stands in stark contrast to the hostility of his predecessor.
What to remember here is that there's three attacks on reality in our society right now, and that is for the most part being actively promoted by almost everybody. One is crypto, the other is AI, and the third is transsexuality. Crypto exists; it's a concept. But Ethereum doesn't exist, Litecoin doesn't exist, Bitcoin doesn't exist, Dogecoin doesn't exist. They're simply attacks on reality. And I'm really disappointed in Donald Trump and his administration for wanting to be the crypto superpower, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. That we're going to be the superpower in terms of attacking reality. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So, but again, the thing to remember, 3 attacks on reality: AI, crypto, and transsexuality. The best way to refer to crypto is as crypto. Best thing to do, stay away from Bitcoin, Litecoin, Schmoin coin, Doin, Moin, Loin. Stay away from all of that stuff because none of them exist. And to refer to them in those ways is reifying the zero. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Tucker Carlson. He's doing an interview with a guy, and, let it speak for itself.
So October 7th happens, and what the Israelis see is an excellent opportunity for ethnic cleansing, and they make this clear. In other words, it's an excellent opportunity to go to war in Gaza and drive the Palestinians out of Gaza and solve that demographic problem that they face.
That's such a dark thing, and therefore that's a very strong allegation. On what basis are you making it?
Oh, there's just a huge amount of data that supports this in the Israeli press. They have been perfectly willing to make this argument loudly and clearly. And you want to remember that you had massive ethnic cleansing in 1948 when the state is created. Virtually all of those people in Gaza are descendants of the ethnic cleansing of 1948.
Were kicked out of another place
and sent to Gaza.
Yeah.
By the way, there was another massive ethnic cleansing after the 67 war in the West Bank. So this is the third attempt at a massive ethnic cleansing in Gaza. So this is hardly surprising at all. And in fact, if you go back and read the literature on the creation of Israel, this is all thoroughly documented. Ethnic cleansing was a subject that the Zionists talked about from the get-go, because there was no way they could create a greater Israel without doing massive ethnic cleansing.
So it wasn't really a land without people for a people without land.
Absolutely not.
And so it's John Mearsheimer is the name of the guy that was being interviewed. But what I wanted you to notice is the technique that Mr. Mearsheimer uses. He makes this arbitrary allegation of ethnic cleansing. He doesn't bother to define his terms. He doesn't bother to actually come to terms. Tucker Carlson challenges him to, wow, this is really dark. Where do you get this? And he just backs up an arbitrary claim with an equally arbitrary claim, claiming that, it's all over Israeli media. But he doesn't say which media. Is it television? Is it print? Is it radio? Is it all three? And if so, why doesn't he name names? I mean, if this is already so obvious, then why aren't you naming names? This station and program, this newspaper. But anyway, so he backs it up with another arbitrary claim and another arbitrary claim about what happened in 1948, saying that was ethnic cleansing and that the Zionists had talked about this openly. But again, he produces not one shred of evidence. And this is the way the left works. They'll make an arbitrary claim. If you challenge them, then they will make another arbitrary claim to back it up. If you challenge that, then they make a third arbitrary claim to back that up. And they just keep making more and more and more arbitrary claims. Because what they want you to do is take their word for it. And again, we don't have to. We can if we want, if we trust them, but we don't have to. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Sanchez.
Creo que muchos de todos estos aspectos de esta mirada compartida entre Uruguay y España vienen recogidos en la declaración conjunta, a la cual ha hecho referencia antes el presidente Orsi, en la que trazamos un camino de futuro en muy diversos ámbitos. Se articula en torno a 6 acuerdos de colaboración que acabamos de firmar, que son acuerdos muy importantes para la ciudadanía, tanto de Uruguay como de España, y que tienen que ver, por ejemplo, con la cooperación en la lucha contra la delincuencia transnacional, la cooperación para el desarrollo sostenible, la igualdad real y efectiva entre hombres y mujeres o también la cultura. Y en materia económica me gustaría reiterar el mensaje que he trasladado también hoy a las empresas españolas y uruguayas en el encuentro que hemos mantenido esta mañana, ¿no? Y es que necesitamos mercados abiertos, reglas claras, mecanismos multilaterales eficaces para resolver las legítimas diferencias que podamos tener en materia comercial. Y en este contexto, tanto el presidente como yo mismo, pues hemos vuelto a compartir la necesidad imperiosa, yo diría, máxima, de culminar el acuerdo de la Unión Europea-Mercosur, que puede cerrarse y entrar en vigor lo antes posible. No solo por lo que representa, que es nada más y nada menos que la creación de la zona de libre comercio más importante del mundo, más grande del mundo, sino por el mensaje de apertura que traslada precisamente ahora en un momento de ensimismamiento, de confrontación, de guerra comercial, como estamos viendo por parte de otras administraciones. Creo que muchos de todos estos aspectos de esta mirada compartida entre Uruguay y España vienen recogidos en la declaración conjunta, a la cual ha hecho referencia antes el presidente Orsi, en la que trazamos un camino de futuro en muy diversos ámbitos. Se articula en torno a 6 acuerdos de colaboración que acabamos de firmar, que son acuerdos muy importantes para la ciudadanía, tanto de Uruguay como de España, y que tienen que ver, por ejemplo, con la cooperación en la lucha contra la delincuencia transnacional, la cooperación para el desarrollo sostenible, la igualdad real y efectiva entre hombres y mujeres o también la cultura. Y en materia económica me gustaría reiterar el mensaje que he trasladado también hoy a las empresas españolas y uruguayas en el encuentro que hemos mantenido esta mañana, ¿no? Y es que necesitamos mercados abiertos, reglas claras, mecanismos multilaterales eficaces para resolver las legítimas diferencias que podamos tener en materia comercial. Y en este contexto, tanto el presidente como yo mismo, pues hemos vuelto a compartir la necesidad imperiosa, yo diría, máxima, de culminar el acuerdo de la Unión Europea-Mercosur, que puede cerrarse y entrar en vigor lo antes posible. No solo por lo que representa, que es nada más y nada menos que la creación de la zona de libre comercio más importante del mundo, más grande del mundo, sino por el mensaje de apertura que traslada precisamente ahora en un momento de ensimismamiento, de confrontación, de guerra comercial, como...
And that was Sanchez. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Giorgia Maloney.
E il caso Kaufman è solo l'epilogo più drammatico e scandaloso di un sistema, che è quello legato al tax credit, al sostegno pubblico al cinema, all'audiovisivo, che negli anni ha generato delle, vere e proprie truffe, ma ha anche costruito un meccanismo distorto che consentiva, di finanziare con centinaia di migliaia, quando non con milioni di euro dei cittadini, delle tasse dei cittadini, film che poi, alla prova dei fatti, nelle sale guadagnavano, poche decine di migliaia di euro, ma intanto avevano pagato cachet milionari a registi e attori. Io me ne ricordo alcuni, esempi enormi, mi ricordo film, i Cassamortari, mi pare, 490 euro di incasso nelle sale, 1.250.000 euro di sostegno pubblico. Ce n'è un altro, 47.000 euro di incasso nelle sale, 400.000 euro di sostegno pubblico, Enigo 500.000 euro di sostegno pubblico, sta ancora nelle sale, ad oggi ha fatto 2.000 euro. E questo sistema è costato allo Stato circa 7 miliardi di euro solo negli ultimi 8 anni. E a me francamente stupisce che qualcuno, anche perfino in questi giorni, perfino in queste ore, continui a difendere questo sistema, perché io penso che sia nell'interesse di tutte le persone che hanno a cuore una gestione decente dei soldi pubblici e della cultura in Italia, che ci sia un sistema trasparente, che ci sia un sistema meritocratico per i contributi al cinema, per i contributi all'audiovisivo. La riforma che il governo ha fatto prevede controlli più stringenti, io rimasi molto colpita dal fatto che ci fosse questa levata di scudi, prevede sanzioni più severe per chi viola le regole, introduce alcune novità secondo me sensate, come il tetto massimo per il compenso a registi, a sceneggiatori e a attori impiegati in film che vengono finanziati con i soldi dello Stato, perché lei sa che il tetto, quando si usano i soldi pubblici, è una misura abbastanza comune. Nel frattempo però il Ministero lavora anche a ulteriori correttivi, perché il nostro interesse è quello di aiutare le società serie ad avere il supporto che meritano e ad averlo in tempi giusti, e fare sì che chi merita possa lavorare con tranquillità, mentre i soldi che prima finivano ai soliti noti col portafoglio gonfio, le sale piene e le sale vuote, vengano destinati a impiego migliore. Lo abbiamo fatto in tanti altri ambiti, lo abbiamo fatto sul superbonus, sul reddito di cittadinanza, i meccanismi che si annidavano nelle pieghe dei permessi di soggiorno per i migranti. Io non ho paura a aggredire le rendite di posizione e a stanare il malaffare. Sono convinta che agli attacchi molto duri rivolti ieri a San Giuliano e oggi al ministro Giuli siano dovuti al fatto che questo governo ha deciso di mettere mano a questo ignobile scandalo, ma sono comunque molto determinata ad andare avanti.
And that was Georgia Maloney. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Europe.
Il y a un tabou en plus très culpabilisant pour les femmes quand même. Moi, je l'ai vu chez ma femme et dans la manière dont le gynécologue s'est comporté. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a un côté... vous allez en faire un autre. Comme si en fait c'était une machine en fait. Et quand on est l'accompagnant, parce que le papa il est concerné mais il n'est qu'accompagnant, il y a un autre tabou aussi, je sais pas, les hommes n'osent pas trop en parler. Elle s'est rendu compte que finalement elle était peut-être tombée enceinte surtout pour me faire plaisir. Et moi je préfère faire confiance au réel d'une femme que j'aime. Plutôt que d'essayer de me dire je vais avoir un enfant, je me fantasme père, essayer de trouver quelqu'un qui aurait le bon âge ou qui voudrait ou je ne sais pas quoi. Surtout que moi je suis tout le temps en tournée etc, donc je me rêve père mais finalement je suis un étourdi atteint d'une Pierre Richardite assez aiguë. J'ai quand même pas mal de tout ça, donc si finalement c'était avoir ça, mettre la pression à quelqu'un qui n'en veut pas, surtout pas. La vie des fois vous cogne et des fois vous offre des surprises extraordinaires, donc je n'ai pas complètement fermé la porte et j'essaye. Il est dans un coin, mais je ne m'y réchauffe pas les mains, quoi. Mais je le laisse allumer.
Est-ce que ça ressemble à une forme de deuil, ça?
C'est un deuil, oui, c'est complètement. Il y a deux deuils. Il y a le deuil du moment de la fausse couche, et ensuite il y a le double deuil du moment où je m'aperçois, et elle s'aperçoit aussi, parce que ça n'a pas été le cas tout de suite, que clairement c'est plus possible pour.
And that was Europe 1. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now a little bit more of Stuart.
Under the boardwalk, out of the sun. Under the boardwalk.
Oh, that's the Drifters. There's a little argument going on the set, ladies and gentlemen.
It's just been settled.
I thought it was Otis Redding. Otis Redding did Under the Boardwalk.
It did, but the Drifters did it first.
Did they?
Yeah.
All right. This is the voice of Jerry Baker, who you will be meeting shortly.
Motown Authority, and other things.
Good morning, everyone. 10 o'clock Eastern. Look at your money. Plenty of green. Well, we got green on the screen. There's not plenty of it. Dow's up 28, Nasdaq up 40 points. Let's get straight to the money. Kevin Hassett speaking about Trump's tariff announcement on India, he says President Trump is frustrated with the progress and that Trump thinks tariffs will help the situation. On Canada trade, Hassett says he still hopes for progress. Okay, that's just coming at us. Maybe it helped the market a little bit. The 10-year Treasury yield coming in this morning at 4.37%. Bitcoin around $117,000 per coin, 117.6 right now. Okay, just received the latest read on pending home sales.
Right.
What's your number?
It decreased by 0.8% in June from May and decreased 2.8% year over year. Pending sales, contract signed, deal not closed. They fell everywhere but right here in the Northeast.
Real estate market's not doing much,
I think people, everyone went away during the pandemic. They went to Florida, Tennessee, and now they're starting to come back because employers are saying it's time to come back.
Okay, we'll take it. Lauren, thank you. Now this. It wasn't that long ago that the climate crazies were telling us that CO2 emissions were killing the planet, and we didn't have much time left to save it. We went through years of climate hysteria. Remember those annual gatherings of world leaders telling us we just had to take action? Well, in 2009, President Obama did the bidding of the climate crowd and came up with the endangerment finding. It was a declaration that greenhouse gases posed a threat to public health. In other words, CO2s could make you sick. That declaration was the legal basis for sweeping government regulation. They could tell you which car you could buy, what kind of stove you could use, how you could heat your home or build a home. Utilities were told to switch to expensive solar and wind energy. And windmills, they just had to be built, no matter how many birds they killed. The endangerment finding seeped into every aspect of our lives. Well, it's going to change. Lee Zeldin at the EPA will revoke the finding, rescind it, right? Get rid of it. The legal justification for all those rules and regulations is going away. Zeldin says rescinding the finding is the largest deregulatory action in the history of the United States. Of course, the environmentalists are apoplectic. Al Gore says, and I'm quoting, EPA's announcement ignores the blindingly obvious reality of the climate crisis. The Greens are going to go to court. They always do. They don't have the votes, but they have plenty of lawyers, and the litigation will go on for a very long time, unless it gets to the Supreme Court quickly. Look, truth is, the writing is on the wall. Time's almost up. After the finding rescission is published in the Federal Register, there will be 45 days to submit comments to the EPA. The agency will then finalize the change by next year. Climate rules will no longer rule your life. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
And that was Stuart Varney, Nonprofit News Now. And again, it's when you're thinking about this type of thing, remember, not environment, but property. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Chapter 18, Section 4 of Apollo.
4. The single event that decisively shaped flight operations happened on the morning of February 20th, 1962, when John Glenn made the United States' first orbital flight. For practical purposes, Glenn's flight was the first test of the flight operations system. Shepard's and Grissom's suborbital flights, which preceded Glenn's, were lobs in a ballistic trajectory that lasted only about 15 minutes each and involved little in-flight decision-making. For Glenn's flight, the flight control team would have to determine whether he was in a stable orbit and instruct him accordingly, monitor his systems over a period of 5 hours, and do its part in bringing him safely out of orbit and into the landing area where the recovery ships were waiting. The flight controllers had never expected it to be an easy flight. Based on the Air Force's experience to date, they could expect to lose 1 out of 4 Atlases during the launch phase. Moreover, the Atlas had recently been displaying a tendency to explode within a few feet of the pad, the most difficult of all times to use the escape tower to lift the astronauts safely away. Some of the explosions had been extremely sudden, giving less warning than they would need to activate the escape tower. Everyone worried about the launch phase. Kraft himself kept an 8x10 photograph of an exploding Atlas under the glass of his desk. But when Glenn actually launched on Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m., the Atlas worked fine. The problem came instead as Glenn was heading east over the Atlantic on his second orbit. A technician named Bill Saunders, sitting in a room to the side of Mercury Control, was scanning the bank of meters in front of him when his eyes fell on meter number 51, segment 51, which registered the deployment of the heat shield. In the Mercury capsule, the heat shield was designed to fall loose after entry into the Earth's atmosphere so that a bag that would absorb the shock of landing could inflate between the deployed heat shield and the bottom of the capsule. Saunders's needle should have been pointing at +10, indicating that the heat shield was clamped to the bottom of Glenn's capsule. Instead, it was pointing at +80, indicating that the heat shield was unlatched. "I've got a valid signal on segment 51, Saunders said into his headset. An observer sitting in the glassed-in viewing area behind the Mercury Control Center would have seen nothing unusual, just Kraft conferring with his controllers and Williams walking unhurriedly out the side door. Williams himself would recount the reality later using the present tense. It's almost impossible to describe the raw tension that this news introduces into Mercury Control and continues to build relentlessly during the rest of the Glenn flight. We are all in a state of shock at the enormity of the situation. For if the heat shield had deployed, they believed at first, there was not a thing they could do about it. Soon they would have to tell Glenn what had happened, and shortly after that, Glenn would die. What happened thereafter was an object lesson in how different spaceflight was from ordinary flight testing, and how much was yet to be done to make flight operations ready to do its job. Their one hope during the first minutes of the crisis was that the signal was false. Instrument readings were as likely to malfunction as the systems that they were monitoring, and nothing had happened that might have triggered the heat shield to release. It was possible, even likely, that the signal was false, but they had no second data point in the telemetry that would enable them to assess that possibility. Perhaps the microswitch for segment 51 hadn't been properly set before launch, but they had no way of knowing that. Then they realized there was a possible way out, even if segment 51 was telling the truth. In the Mercury capsule, the retro rockets that slowed the capsule for entry were part of an assembly called the retro pack that was held against the bottom of the heat shield by stainless steel straps. The straps themselves were clamped onto the main body of the capsule. Normally, the retro pack would be jettisoned after it had slowed the capsule. Suppose instead that they left the retro pack in place during the entry. The straps holding the retro pack to the spacecraft would burn through, but by the time they did, the forces from the entry might hold the loose heat shield in place. It was at least a hope. Now they were faced with a classic dilemma. If the segment 51 signal was valid, they would have to leave the retro pack strapped on because it was the only hope for saving Glenn. But if the segment 51 signal was false and they left the retro pack strapped on, Glenn could be killed. The shock waves of the burning retro pack might damage the heat shield. The extra inertia created by the weight of the pack might change the capsule's attitude. In short, they had no safe choices. To choose among the risks, Williams and Kraft needed to know what the odds were that leaving the retro pack on would cause a problem. That kind of knowledge was not available in Mercury Control, so the calls went out. Over at Hangar S, the McDonnell engineers feverishly began laying out long strips of schematics on the hangar floor. Telephone circuits were patched up with the McDonnell plant in St. Louis. Williams called Houston to confer with a man who had been thinking about the aerodynamic characteristics of the Mercury capsule longer than anybody, Max Faget. No one had ever tested a spacecraft entry with a retro pack attached. No one had even thought about it. Faget talked through the problem over the phone with Mercury Control. Later, Joe Shea would be fascinated when Faget recounted his thinking. Faget had a first-order feel, in Shea's words, that leaving the retro pack on wasn't going to be a problem. Faget understood the nature of the pressures and forces on the spacecraft, not by calculation, but by apprehending the engineering gestalt of the situation. Eventually, Williams decided that leaving the retro pack on was the lesser of the evils. They would find out later that segment 51 had been misleading them after all, and that they could have conducted a normal entry. But by that time, John Glenn was safely home, a national hero, and Mission Control was being applauded for its cool professionalism under pressure. Professional, yes. The flight control team had stayed calm and had done the best they could with the information they had available. But it had been an ad hoc, jury-rigged, scrambling effort, and from that experience came a structure for trying to ensure that they would never have to make those kinds of guesses again.
And that was section 4 of chapter 18 of Apollo, Charles Murray, by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. I like this book because, number one, the narrator, I love his voice. And number two, you hear people talking about rocket science. They throw it around. They say, well, that isn't rocket science, that kind of thing. And this is all about rocket science and rocket scientists. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative of the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that determinism is a choice.